Hello, Commissioner Gallen-Clark. How are you? All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting of the City of Hartford Charter Revision Commission to order at 7:05 p.m. And our first item of business will be the roll call. David Grant, please take it away.
Thank you very much. When I call your name, just please say here for the record. James Wolfe.
Here.
Raul De Jesus Jr.
Here.
John Gale.
Here.
Alexander Aponte. Arunan Arulampalam. Steve Bonafonte.
Here.
Vicky Gallen-Clark.
Here.
Kamora Harrington. Kenneth Kennedy.
Here.
Kathleen Kowalshin.
Here.
Melvin Medina. Jadira Rivera.
Here.
Bruce Rubenstein. Eon Smith. I see the Eon's on, so you have quorum.
Sorry, I'm here.
Gotcha.
No problem, Commissioner Smith. All right, we will move to item number 2, approval of the minutes from the March 17th, 2022 meeting and the April 7th, 2022 meeting. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion's been made. Motion's been made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Gallen-Clark?
Yes, I wanted the minutes to reflect my opposition. It was on page. Hold on. Actually, it's the minutes from last week.
Okay, so those are part of the motion.
For the last week as well?
Yeah,
yes.
we combine them. Steve, what's the best way to do we need to amend the motion here?
Well, you can simply say that you want to correct the minutes for such and such a date as follows, and it would be part of the overall motion. I think it would be fine.
So it's action item number 7.
Okay. And you want the minutes to reflect your opposition to action item number 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I did not vote for that.
Okay. So as a part of the motion, the record will reflect that Commissioner Gallen-Clark was opposed to action item number 7. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain. Abstain.
Commissioner Kennedy and Commissioner Smith abstain. The ayes have it and the motion carries. I'd like to recognize Commissioner Rubenstein has joined us as well for the record. We'll now move on to the chairman's report. At this time, I don't have a report. There may be some commentary that I offer at the end during our discussion with Attorney Mednick about the calendar for the commission. So we'll then move on to item number 4, public comment. So the public comment portion of the meeting will be conducted in accordance with the following procedures. Each person wishing to address the commission shall, upon recognition by the presiding officer, give his or her name, address, and if he or she represents a group, And they shall, in addition, state for the record the name and address of said group or organization, and shall limit his or her remarks to 5 minutes. All remarks shall be addressed to the commission as a body and not to any individual member. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks, or who becomes boisterous while addressing the commission, shall be forthwith barred by the presiding officer from further audience at this meeting, unless permission to remain is granted by a 2/3 vote of the commission members present and voting. During the public comment portion of the meeting, there shall be no debate by the commission, although questions may be asked by commissioners to members of the public through the chair. So with that, we'll open it up for public hearing, and I will recognize Janet Bauer. Janet, you have 5 minutes. And let me just start the timer here for you. Okay. Janet, you're on mute.
My name is Janet Bauer. I live in West Hartford, 19 Warwick Street. I am co-chair of Hartford's Commission for Refugee and Immigrant Affairs. Since around 2015, the commission has been working on the issue of non-citizen voting in local elections, like school board elections. We've been researching the issue. We understand that in order for that to be a reality, there has to be probably a revision of the charter. And I understand from my first appearance, I think before the constitution of this commission in some kind of hearing, the council mentioned that the state of Connecticut would have to approve the commission acting upon or allowing non-citizen voting. I'd just like to point out briefly that there are advantages to allowing residents, long-term residents in particular, who have children in the schools, who have been participating in our economy and communities, an opportunity to participate in local voting. And that several towns and cities around the country, including recently New York, and also Winooski, Vermont, which went through a similar set of procedures that Hartford would have to go through to allow non-citizen voting. I've been looking at their procedures and sort of the concerns that citizens had. I've been unable to get a response from their commission, their Charter Revision Commission, which may be inactive now. But I thought maybe this commission could get more information from them. We originally became interested in talking to the commission because we wanted someone from this commission to come talk to us about how Hartford could enact non-citizen voting in local elections. And we'd be happy to provide more information from the research we've been doing and to discuss this with you further. We're really interested in seeing what your commission, the Charter Revision Commission, might feel about this issue and whether you might consider this as an option.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janet. Do we have any questions for Janet Bauer? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much. Oh, Commissioner Smith, do you have a question?
I do. I'm sorry, through the chair. There was mention that this is something that would have to go through the state legislature. Do we know what the procedure is for that? Will we be able to enact something and then have it confirmed, or do we have to get permission before we can even have that discussion and bring this issue to bear here?
Attorney Mendick, do you want to comment on that?
I think it's, am I mute? I'm not on mute, am I? Okay, I'm clear. I just decided to bring up the Constitution of the state of Connecticut on my screen. I thought I might be asked the question. And I think that the qualification of electors is set by Article 6 of the state constitution. It talks about being 21, residing in a town, and being an elector in the state. And so I think at there might be the need for a constitutional change to allow somebody who is not an elector or a citizen to vote in a local municipal election. If it required state action, if the state could do it, and that's why I decided to take a look at the Constitution, the state would have to enable a local government to do it. Local governments have no authority to do that which is not expressly granted to it. So it's not a question of, the commission's heard me say this a million times, and I apologize to the commissioners for saying it one more time, but as a courtesy to Ms. Bauer, I just wanted to point out that silence is not enough. They have to give us an express grant of authority. And to my knowledge, there is no express grant of authority for this idea, which I think, you've made some meritorious arguments. I'm not sure Thank you very much. So I think that that would be my concern. So I don't think we have authority to do anything at this point.
Thank you so much, Attorney Mednick.
Can I make one additional point?
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you, Commissioner Smith, and Janet, please do go ahead.
I understand that there are only 2 states in the union that expressly make it illegal for non-citizens to vote. So Connecticut is not one of those 2 states. I just wondered if there's some other mechanism by which to approach the state on that issue.
Attorney Mednick, do you want to provide?
I'm not sure. No, it's not. It's not expressly illegal. The question is whether it's expressly legal. And I don't pretend to be an expert on Article 6, Section 1 of the state constitution, but I think that that's what people would have to look to. And it does talk about the age of 21, residing in a town, which offer to be admitted to the privileges of elector, and there's other things in here that are really surprising. Able to read the English language, any article of the Constitution. So I think there's some issues. I think it really is a state issue before it becomes a local issue. I want to make sure I'm looking at the right Constitution here. 1965 Constitution. Yep, it's the 1965 Constitution. I was a little surprised by that reading English provision. Yeah, this is it. So my sense is you need to go to the legislature. Whether there's a need for a constitutional change was a totally different issue, is another issue. But I think you really need to go to the legislature, and municipalities just can't have no inherent authority or power to make this kind of change. So I think it really is a state issue first, and then perhaps come back to the city council or the mayor if the law is clear in the state. But I don't think that the commission would have any authority, or the city council would have any authority at the present time to do anything about this.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Mednick, and thank you, Janet, for your taking your time tonight to address the commission. We appreciate it. Do we have any other members of the public on the
question, Chairman?
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Gale, Councilman Gale, rather. I apologize. Yep.
Yeah, you call me anything you want. I just quick to Janet. Janet, I'd be more than happy to have an offline conversation with the commission on this issue. If you would get in touch with me, I'm at john.gale@hartford.gov. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll do that.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay. Any other members of the public that would like to address the commission this evening? Are there any other members? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to Steve. Would you be prepared if I think we're considering moving to action to item number 6. Would you be opposed to moving to action item number 5 or agenda item number 5, committee action?
Discussion items? No, not at all.
The commission actions, the agenda item number 5.
Yeah, discussion item 5A on the council. Am I misreading?
No, the action item number 8, periodic ordinance review.
Oh, I have no problem with that.
Okay.
You're having me jumping around here, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize.
That's all right.
I'll give you a moment.
I got it. Do you want me to explain?
Yes, please.
Let me just make a note of 4A.
Actually, you know what? So, folks, let me back up here. So, we're going to be taking. We have 4 items for action this evening, 2 of which we will be holding, and I will explain that in a moment. But first, we're going to consider action item number 8, periodic ordinance review, and I'll entertain a motion to approve action item number 8.
So moved.
We have the motion's been made by Commissioner Gale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner DeJesus. Okay, Attorney Mednick, if you'd like to discuss the item for us.
Yep, this is very brief to the point. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. This is a section that will be added to the end of the charter. As you have to do 10-year reviews of the charter, this provision requires after every revision of a charter, so this charter is modified, revised, and approved in November, the Common Council next year and every 5 years thereafter would be have an obligation to review the code of ordinances to ensure compliance and conformity with the provisions of the general statutes. Remember, charters happen every 10 years or so, but the general statutes are passing all the time. And we're saying that there should be a rigorous review at least every 5 years and following charter revision to make sure that the ordinances are in compliance with the general statutes and the charter. And we've talked about this multiple times during this process, that going back to 2002, when I did my first charter with Hartford, there was an ordinance revision process initiated in the mid-aughts that it ended when a mayoralty ended, and it was never picked back up again. Hence, there are a number of provisions in the code that still refer to a city manager. And so that's 18 years ago, almost 20 years ago. And so the idea of this provision is to make sure that the council stays on top of the ordinances and make sure that they're cleaned up. The first run through would probably be a fairly major enterprise, but once they're up and running, it would seem to me somebody on staff should be paying attention to what's going on in the General Assembly to see if there's any need year to year for a change. It doesn't prevent the council from looking at it, but every 5 years they would have to take a look at the ordinances and make sure that they're up to date.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, David Grant, would you call the roll?
Yes. So for the record, when I call your name, just please say yes, no, or abstain. James Wolfe.
Yes.
Raul De Jesus Jr.
Yes.
John Gale.
Yes.
Alexander Aponte.
Yes.
Arunan Arulampalam.
Yes.
Steve Bonafonte.
Yes.
Vicky Gallen Clark.
Yes.
Kamora Harrington. Kenneth Kennedy.
Yes.
Kathleen Kowalshan.
Yes.
Melvin Medina. Jadida Rivera.
Yes.
Bruce Rubenstein. Dion Smith.
Yes.
And Bruce Rubenstein.
You're on mute, Bruce.
David, let's hold the vote for him. He's having issues.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Pass.
All right. We will be holding item B, action item number 9, temporary absence or disability of the mayor. We're going to give Corp Counsel another couple of weeks to review that item and before we potentially consider it at our next meeting. And so we will move on to item number 5C, action item number 10, boards and commissions. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion's been made by Councilman Gale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Aponte. Steve, would you walk us through this action or this item that's up for consideration?
Yes. So this is the item that was presented last week. What this recommends is that we have a section under boards and commissions that establish appointed boards and commissions that are required by the charter. It does not set the commissions up. It requires simply that the commissions, these boards and commissions, be entities that exist, mandate them. For example, the Ethics Commission already exists. There's already an ordinance setting up the Ethics Commission, but I had said to the chair and others that it was odd that it wasn't required by the charter. In fact, the Hartford Charter is relatively quiet on ethics. So that's kind of a catch-up provision to make sure that you can't take the Ethics Commission away. So this would mandate the creation of an Ethics Commission. A and B would simply require by charter two boards that exist in different forms at the present time. The Police Accountability Review Board, which I believe is currently in place as a result of a resolution. So the change would be, if this was adopted, is that that board would have to be created by ordinance, which is a law as opposed to an opinion, which a resolution essentially is. With regard to the Civilian Review Board, which is already on the books as an ordinance, this would simply be a requirement regardless of the state of affairs right now. This was created as a result of a court case many years ago preceding the reform bill 2 years ago in the legislature. The charter would be taking the position that you should have this review board and the inspector general as positions that are covered by the board, the code of ordinances. And so they would need to be compliant when they are drafted with the provisions of our charter that say, here's how you set up a board or commission. So we have a kind of a prescriptive guideline within our charter as to how they would be set up. I think that is it, Mr. Chairman. And accompanying that for your background is background document number 17. I think Commissioner Medina had requested that we provide the commission with the Hamden Police Commission charter provision and the proposed charter provision. And just to point out for the record that the first, well, I don't have page numbers on this, but most of the document is the proposed police commission. The last 3 pages of the document is the current police commission in Hamden. They currently do have a police commission, which is different than Hartford, which does not. And their police commission is also included in the line of fire in the collective bargaining agreement. So I provided that at the request of Commissioner Medina.
Thank you, Steve. I'll now open it up for discussion, and I will recognize Commissioner Smith.
Actually, my hands went up with regard to action item number 9 that you've tabled. So I'm going to allow the discussion regarding this to take place. And then if we can revisit that action item number 9 after the discussion, since Attorney Mednick spent so much time explaining the current item that's being open for discussion.
No problem.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Kennedy, and then I will recognize Commissioner Rubenstein.
I just want to be clear on this. Are we foreclosing then the idea of a police commission in this charter recommendation?
It's not foreclosed.
But it's pretty much done.
We don't have many meetings left. So that's where.
Yeah, I just say everyone. My vote will be no then if we're not going to consider that. Want to be as cooperative as possible and bring as many ideas, but I do think it's high time we move away from. We need a different governing body for the police department. Period. I think it should be for both police and fire, but at a minimum, the police department. The police department is the most intrinsic, non-compliant department in the city of Hartford. It has been that way for decades. So in good conscience, I like many of the ideas that are here. I can't vote for something that if we're going to foreclose discussion on any other idea in terms of real concrete change. And if that's just not going to happen, that's fine. But I can't support it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Councilman Gale. Oh, excuse me. Commissioner Rubenstein, then Councilman Gale. Commissioner Rubenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Attorney Mednick. Attorney Mednick, what is the appointing authority for both PARB and the other entity in terms of the numbers, and who does the appointing?
The charter would be silent on that. That would be created by ordinance. It would be up to the Common Council to make that determination in all those cases.
One thing that I'm puzzled by is that there were about 5 or 6 folks on the commission at any one time that spoke up for a police commission. And to see that good work by the 5 or 6, and others were silent, by the way, is baffling to me. And like Commissioner Kennedy, I'm interested in a bona fide police commission, not this stuff. I think this is putting a Band-Aid on cancer. Hartford has about 120,000 folks. 85% or a little more are minorities of color. Police have about 400 members, of which the vast majority are white. And something has to change. The police have to look like the face of the city. We're not going to get there with this stuff.
Almost none are residents, Bruce.
Pardon me?
Almost none are residents of the city, by the way.
Excuse me, Commissioner Kennedy. You're going to have to go through the chair on this. This is a contentious issue. We're going to let Commissioner Rubenstein finish. If you'd like to be recognized for a second time, I will do that after Commissioner Gallen-Clark and Commissioner Gale speak. Commissioner Rubenstein, please continue.
Thank you. What I'd like to see is a motion made for a police commission, which I'll second if somebody makes the motion, because I'd like to see a vote on it and see where people stand. Thank you.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Seconded.
We have a motion on the floor that's currently being considered. Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to address the motion that's on the floor, which is the motion to approve action item 10, as I understand it. I certainly hear Commissioner Kennedy and Commissioner Rubenstein. However, I would say that the current city council just spent an incredible amount of time in fashioning a major overhaul of the Civilian Review Board. And part of that major overhaul was to then bring in paid staff the Inspector General, this new Civilian Review Board, Civilian Police Review Board, has just barely started its work. I don't think there's been any opportunity to see how it's going to function. Certainly the goal was for it to be a dramatic improvement. So I think it's very premature to consider moving to something else before we've given the existing bodies an opportunity to demonstrate their effectiveness or lack thereof. There's no, I would add that there's no particular meat on the bones in discussing any alternative. At least right now, there is an existing Civilian Police Review Board ordinance. And again, I have to emphasize, this existing council spent a lot of time, many, many months, with administration going back and over that. So I don't know why we'd want to throw that away. And to the extent, I would just say, to the extent that everything that this body does goes back to council, remember who you're sending it back to. So anyway, I would certainly be in favor of this. I don't think it's appropriate for there to be a wholesale attack on our existing police force. I'd be happy to. Our Human Resources Department can get you statistics if people want to know what's the composition of the police force. I think one of the things that's happened that you may not be aware of over the last several years is that all of the cadet classes that the police have recruited have been heavily weighed in favor of Hartford residents and minorities. That's not to say that everybody's graduated from the class and been hired, but there's certainly been a fairly substantial effort made to have the Hartford police force look more like Hartford. Everybody's very well aware of that and been recruiting in that towards that direction. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. Commissioner Gallon Clark.
As I'm concerned regarding what I'm picking up as a resistance or reluctance to make any radical changes. And I question also how much accountability, even though the word is in there, does a Police Accountability Review Board can they actually exert over the police department? And so I would definitely be in favor of this body looking at doing something very radical, very different, something that we're overdue and changing the whole law enforcement structure in Hartford. So again, I'm very concerned about just going through the motions, which sometimes I get the impression that that's what we're doing, as opposed to making real changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gallon Clark. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I have an issue with a commissioner calling a difference in opinion an attack. We have very, very different views, different background, different experiences. And that's, I believe, one of the reasons why we're here on this commission, to try to figure out what is in the best interest of Hartford, taking into consideration the community which we represent. So if someone has a different opinion, we believe that there needs to be an overhaul of the police department, or at least some accountability. I don't think that that's a wholesale attack on the police department. I think we're speaking to the problem that we've seen in the community, the complaints that we've received from members of the community. And as a body, we're here to try to see how can we remedy that. I understand that, the council has done a great deal of work to sort of put something in place, but we will not have this opportunity again for 10 years. And I think for us to shirk the responsibility, which we essentially came here and swore that we're going to uphold, and we're going to do something to better the lives of the citizens of Hartford. And if we attempt to do that, or we, one commissioner or body or commissioners feel that, not taking action on a particular matter is not serving the community, I don't think that that's to be considered a wholesale attack. So, Chair, I would just ask you to ensure that all commissioners refrain from engaging in such language. And if it is that we're going to disagree, we can disagree, but to essentially try to paint individual as anti-police, that's how I'm going to take that, right? When we say wholesale attack on the police department, we're essentially, we're treading into very, very water that we need not go. So we have disagreement in terms of whether or not this is an item that we should have a lively debate about, or whether we should continue to vote on it and see if we can make some changes. And if it is that it turns out that we're going to just pass on it because the vote is not there, or we're going to work on it when it's there, I think that's something that we should do. But I don't think that this agreement should be categorized as a tax. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Commissioner Kennedy for the second time.
Thank you through the chair. My comments were meant to support Mr. Rubenstein, not to interrupt his dialect. So I didn't consider them to be inappropriate, nor trying to disrupt the chair's control of the meeting. Let's get back to your recommendation with respect to the Civilian Police Review Board. It's not a governing body. Therefore, there's making no structural change or any attempt to make structural change to the police department. It is literally putting lipstick on a pig, in my opinion. I don't mean it as an attack on anyone, but it is not substantial change. And until you've been in this position, you've been pulled over by the police department, I don't think you can sit down and talk about, to me, that this is somehow an appropriate remedy, accountability. I want to hope we save this tape for 10 years from now, because we can then play it. These conversations have been going on for decades with respect to police department change. I was there when we tried to put in police cameras, and they were all somehow broken within a year. We've been talking about making residential change in Hartford. Hasn't happened. We've been talking about making the police department look more like the resident city of Hartford for well over 25 years. I understand how some people don't want change, but if we're not going to make any substantial change, then we can just call it up now and just send it home. I've missed one meeting, and that was for the birth of my grandchild. I have attended these meetings. We have put this issue on the table. It makes me now think, what other issues are we not going to be allowed to motion into? Because I don't have control of the agenda. The chair does. The chair puts things in front of the agenda. The chair just basically said, we're not going to take a motion from the floor so that we can vote on this. Here's a package you're being presented, and this is how we expect you to vote. I'm not cool with that. There has to be a way, once we say no to this, assuming that is a majority vote, that somehow we can have a further discussion on this issue. And if it's going to be that way with respect to makeup of the council and some of the other issues that you consider hot issues, tell me now, so I won't have to attend any further meetings. If we're not going to have any appointments to from the council to commissions, or if we're not going to entertain structural change to the city council, I mean, because the chair is going to give us either what the chair thinks or what City Hall thinks should be before us for us to vote on, that's fine. I'm not going to try to change that. I just don't need to participate. And I need to tell people that brought me here, that wanted me to be here, and all those people I talked to, what happened with this process. The process was shut down. The people I've talked to want some of these structural changes. Look, I ran for office for a long time. Many of those times I had significant support. Not doing this is just, when you're in charge of the chair, the idea for the chair is not just to shut it down, not to only present certain ideas. You have to take ideas from the floor, maybe even from the community itself, beyond just the commissioners who are here for these meetings. That's my complaint right now. I mean, you've got a motion on the floor in the middle of your discussion. At some point in time, the motion and the second has to be entertained. If this motion, even if this motion is successful, it still doesn't preclude the discussion about having a commissioner type form of government over the police department, which I think many of us feel is appropriate. Having people elected who are close to the community, who can go raise Cain with the police department. I mean, for example, you don't want to have this long discussion, I understand, and I'm sorry for this. We've had police departments literally kick people, retire the next day, and escape any type of retribution. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Again, I question the people we hire, our hiring process. I've been involved in that myself, Councilman Gale. And the resistance from the police department is sometimes remarkable. They don't really see, in my opinion, I'm not sure we're all working together. How about that? To achieve what I think is an appropriate goal. So just repeating what we currently have, how does that serve the residents of this city? It's a valid, I mean, keeping what we have and you know, Civilian Police Review Board has been around forever. Keeping what we have, what does that change? My comments are done, and I anticipate a no vote for me.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Kennedy. Commissioner Rubenstein, we will recognize you next. Commissioner Gale, you have the floor for the second time.
Just a quick response to Commissioner Kennedy with respect to the comment that there's nothing new with the Civilian Police Review Board. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think it's accurate at all. I mean, I think Commissioner Kennedy is correct that the Civilian Police Review Board was lacking in any kind of teeth for many, many years. And sometimes it wasn't correctly popular. It didn't have enough bodies. It wasn't meeting. I know when I came on council 6 years ago, it was not meeting on any kind of a regular basis. So it couldn't do any job. But that's the whole point of the ordinance that I mentioned that has just gone into effect. There is now a hired inspector general who does have authority, has subpoena power. It is a dramatic difference, and it just hasn't even been given an opportunity to demonstrate any results. So, and I respectfully, I don't think that the Hartford Police Force of 2022 is the same as the Hartford Police Force of 25 years ago. And I furthermore don't think that passing this precludes any other actions. So if you don't want to pass this and require that these things continue to exist, I guess it's your prerogative. It's passing this certainly doesn't prohibit you from doing anything else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gale. Commissioner Gallen-Clark. Actually,
I thought it was Commissioner Rubenstein.
I skipped Commissioner Rubenstein again. Sorry, I missed the.
I'm starting to get a complex.
Commissioner Rubenstein, go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. Through you to Commissioner Gale. While you mentioned that this was a quote significant change, for me, this is not significant enough. There are many cities throughout the United States, I could name them, Atlanta, Seattle, Detroit, and other cities closer in population to us that have turned over the administration of the police departments in their locales to the public by way of elected or appointed even police commissions. Here in Connecticut, we have an example of Berlin, which has an elected police commission, and New Britain, which one of our commissioners sat on as an appointed police commissioner. Right now, and for the last 25, 40 years, it's the administration that runs the police department. I have looked at most of the administrators in the administration, and not one of them has any education in police work. They have a lot of education in politics, but not in police work. I just think that it's high time to turn over the administration of the police department to the folks in the city that could run the police department much better than it's being run now. We have, as I said before, a city in which the composite makeup does not reflect the faces of the city. I do not believe putting into place these items, which to me are merely Band-Aids, is going to make any difference in terms of getting to a point where the police department looks like the face of the city. So I will be voting no.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein and Commissioner Gallon-Clark.
I believe Commissioner Smith said something that was very critical. He talked about the different experiences and backgrounds that are represented on this commission. And the experiences that I've had, the experiences that I'm pretty sure that Commissioner Smith has had, or Commissioner Kennedy, is probably radically different than most of you on this commission as it relates to encounters with law enforcement here, even here in Hartford. So it's a very sensitive subject. We're bringing different experiences to the table, and that's why we feel so strongly about this topic. Completely different experiences, one that you will probably never experience in your lifetime.
Thank you, Commissioner Gallon-Clark. So, Commissioner Rubenstein, I wanted to revisit your motion. Would you like to make that a motion to amend the motion on the floor?
Yes.
Which would allow for, I don't want to put words in your mouth here. Are you making a motion to amend the current motion to create, to add a police commission to this this current agenda item that we're considering?
Yes, an elected police commission. That's correct.
Police commission. Okay, the motion was made by Commissioner Rubenstein. I believe it was seconded by Commissioner Kennedy. Is that correct?
Commissioner Smith.
Commissioner Smith, excuse me. Do we have any discussion on the amendment?
Does the amendment have to be accepted by the original maker of the motion?
Council Aponte is correct. As long as it is accepted as friendly by the original maker of the motion, then we are.
I'll defer to Steve Mendick here.
Friendly amendments are an interesting topic. Seriously, if you read Robert's rules, they even say that there really is no such thing as a friendly amendment. And even Robert's rules says if you want to amend an item, even if it's friendly, there should be a motion and a second for the amendment and have it adopted to be part of the package in that way. If you want to operate informally under the concept of a friendly amendment, this is not a parliamentary body, and ultimately the entire package will be voted upon at some point with a legitimate vote if you want to move by consensus with that as well. But it's an interesting topic, friendly amendments.
Okay.
Okay, so I think to proceed forward, we'll do a roll call vote on the amendment. Commissioner DeJesus, do you have a question?
For the record, who is the maker of the motion?
Me, John
Maker
Gale.
of the motion was Commissioner Gale.
And who seconded?
I believe that was Commissioner Aponte. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to amend action item number 10 to create a elected police commission. David Grant, would you please call the roll?
Further question?
Commissioner DeJesus.
Clarity on the amendment. When they say create it, create a commission, can they explain that to me a little bit? Who's the maker of that motion?
Sure. Commissioner Rubenstein, as the maker.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, through you. Yes, I foresee a 9-member district police commission. There'd be 9 police commissioners throughout the city with a proper apportionment committee to set the boundaries of the district.
Commissioner Rubin, Steve?
Yeah, just for the record, if the category of this action item is boards and commissions that are required by the charter, we're not establishing any of the parameters of appointment. All we're establishing is that there shall be a commission of this nature. And so the motion should probably say what it is the commission is doing or going to do, and then leave it up to the council to decide, is it elected, is it appointed, how many, is it by districts, is it at large? That would be a council decision. So if you're amending this action item, it should simply establish a police commission and lay out what a police commission does, or a police commission in accordance with the general statute provisions regarding the role of police commissioners. And if it's beyond that, if you're trying to establish an entity with a number, with an appointment methodology, or in this case, an election methodology, that would probably be a freestanding amendment to the charter. That would make it akin to the other charter commissions that are fully fleshed out. So I just wanted to point that out, that when I was asked initially about the concept of amending this, if you want to let the council create the entity, this simply mandates that the entity be created. Is that clear, Mr. Chairman? I hope that's clear.
Yes, yes, it is.
Right. So if this was an amendment to this package, it would be a police commission to serve the statutory purposes of police commissions regarding the general management of police departments, or something like that. We can come up with more artful language for the final version of it, but that would be the approach, and then leave it up to the city council, the common council, to determine how it fits in the mix of these different entities. That's it.
Thank you, Attorney Medic. Commissioner Rubenstein, does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'm good with that.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the amendment?
Can we clarify that amendment through the chair? What is the actual vote that we're going to be voting on? I know that was long-winded, but it needs to be clear. It's exactly what we're voting on.
Yes. Commissioner Rubenstein, do you want to clarify your amendment?
I'd rather not. Let's let the council clarify it.
Well,
Attorney Mendick, go ahead.
I'll give you language. If you don't like the language, it'll work. This is how it establishes a police commission in another community. There shall be a police commission which shall have the authority to exercise the powers and duties contained in this charter and ordinances pertaining to the oversight of the general management, including operations of the police department of the city, and the equipment used by the members of the department, period. And it can go on from there, but that kind of sets it as a police commission that has, there's some statutory understanding of how police commissions work, and then there's common law, case law that define them further, and the council, I'm sure, would be equipped to make a determination about how that would work. But that is a more short-winded answer, I think, for the vice chair.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, David Grant, would you call the roll on the amendment?
Yes. James Wolfe?
No.
Raul De Jesus Jr.?
Pass.
John Gale?
No.
Alexander Aponte?
No.
Arunan Arulampalum?
Did you know that the
No.
Steve Bonafonte?
No.
Vicky Gallen-Clark?
Yes.
Kamora Harrington? Kenneth Kennedy?
Yeah.
Kathleen Kowalshan?
No.
Melvin Medina? Jadira Rivera?
No.
Bruce Rubenstein?
Yes.
Eon Smith?
Yes.
Raul De Jesus Jr.?
Let me just get some clarity. This will be under subsection A in this commission and boards, that amendment?
I think it would be, even though it sounds very similar to A, I don't think it was
separate.
Yeah, I think it would be D. It would
separate.
be D, is my guess. I could be wrong. It's not. I'm not the sponsor.
And discussion is closed, so
Exactly.
there's a vote on the floor.
Raul, do you have a vote you'd like to cast?
Yes.
So that's 7 no's and 5 yeses.
If it's possible, could I have a written copy of those who voted for and those who voted against?
That will be reflected in the minutes, Commissioner. Thank you.
Okay. As soon as I get a copy of that, I'd greatly appreciate it.
So my vote is counted as, what are you guys counted it as?
Your vote was a yes on to approve the amendment. It was a yes in favor of the amendment put forward by Commissioner Rubenstein.
So for clarification, we have 7 no's and 5 yeses.
Motion fails.
Yeah, I'm a no though. But what I'm saying is, this is such a confusing.
Hold on, Commissioner. Yeah. Commissioner, we're now back on the original motion, and we're still engaged in discussion on that. I'll recognize Commissioner De Jesus on the motion.
This is not done. So we had a motion, so we're going back to the motion that we did, right? Are we still
there was a vote to amend the original motion. That amendment failed, and now we're on the original motion.
All right, go ahead.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Moved in discussion.
Motion second and discussion seconded. David Grant, would you please call the roll?
So this is on the original motion. James Wolfe?
Yes.
Raul De Jesus Jr.?
This one is a yes.
John Gale?
Yes.
Alexander Aponte,
Abstain.
Arunan Oralampalam,
Yes.
Steve Bonafonte,
Yes.
Vicky Gallen Clark,
No.
Kamora Harrington, Kenneth Kennedy,
No.
Kathleen Kowalshan,
Yes.
Melvin Medina, Yadira Rivera,
Yes.
Bruce Rubenstein,
No.
Eon Smith.
No.
So we have 7 yes, 1 abstain, and the rest are no.
How much of the rest?
It's important that we have an accurate reflection. It's an accurate that we have an accurate vote. It is important.
It failed.
I understand that, but I want everything. I want everyone's vote on.
Okay, Commissioner Kennedy. David Grant, would you recount the vote, please, and state the vote again?
So we have for the record, we have James Wolfe as a yes, Raul De Jesus Jr. as a yes, John Gale as a yes, Alexander Aponte as a yes.
No, he said abstain. That's an abstention there.
Yeah.
Abstain. Arunan Oralampalam as a yes, Steve Bonafonte as a yes, Vicky Gallen Clark, no, Kamora Harrington, absent, Kenneth Kennedy, no, Kathleen Kowalshan as a yes, Melvin Medina as absent, Yadira Rivera as a yes, Bruce Rubenstein as a no, and Eon Smith as a no. So 7-1-4 or 7-4-1.
The motion carries. All right, we'll move on to action item number 11. This will not be, we'll not be taking this up as an action item tonight. We'll just be discussing this item, and then we will go back for a brief discussion on the temporary absence or disability of the mayor. But Steve, if you wouldn't mind, please walk us through this action item number 11, which we will be passing on this evening, and then potentially taking up for a vote at the next meeting.
Okay, this is a document that was provided by bond counsel Dave Panico, Robinson & Cole, makes a couple of minor changes. In section 2, there's the requirement for the council to pass a procedural ordinance, which would provide that the treasurer, upon consultation of the director of finance, have the ability to retain consultants for specialized services. Right now, the provision requires the treasurer and the director of finance to agree on or to provide for the retention of consultants for specialized services. This would have that lodged with the treasurer's office, which is primarily responsible following consultation with the director of finance. That is a change that came in. The other change is in section 3, where they extended the lapse period from 20 days to 30 days for the purposes of bringing a petition. It actually extends the period of time for bringing a petition if the voters wanted to oppose the adoption of to have a referendum opposing a bond ordinance. Those are the 2 changes.
Okay, great. And so because this was not introduced at a previous meeting, we won't have a vote on this. But if folks want to ask any questions about this, feel free to do so now. Councilman Gale.
I'm just wondering if anybody has any inkling as to why this has been put forward. If I understand the explanation, this is the real effect of this is that the treasurer no longer would have to consult with the director of finance, meaning that the director of finance being appointed by the administration that was elected, the treasurer being a separate elected office, there would no longer be a check and balance on the treasurer's office, if I'm understanding this. And I was not aware. It's never come to my attention in the last 6 years of being on council that there's been any discord between the director of finance and the treasurer's office. But I'm just wondering why this would be coming forward.
I can tell you how the genesis of it. I contacted bond counsel, as I always do in charter revisions, because borrowing provisions in a lot of documents have not been touched for many, many years. And bond counsel did their due diligence. I don't know who they talked to, but they came back initially with the change in Section 3 on the referendum, and then came back with the change in Section 2A. Before our next meeting, I'll be happy to call bond counsel and see what the reasons for this are. I mean, I can assume that since it's the treasurer's office that prepares this, that's why the treasurer has a dominant position, but it requires a consultation with the director of finance. So it's not done without consultation. It is done with consultation. The way the language reads right now is that the ordinance may set forth the respective roles and coextensive responsibilities of the treasurer and the director of finance with respect to debt, and to provide for the planning. And keep in mind, this isn't giving the treasurer anything. This is saying that the council has to come up with an ordinance to define how this is done. And so you can, through an ordinance, if I read this correctly, I'm not a bond attorney, you can certainly put responsibilities on the treasurer, obligations upon the treasurer to make sure that a meaningful consultation does in fact take place, and that there could be reporting requirements on how that works. So this is really your procedural ordinance, and it acknowledges, if I were to read it the way I'm reading it, the treasurer's primacy in this area, but it also recognizes the need for a consultation with the remainder of the executive branch. So, but I will talk to Dave Panico and try to get his read on it and see if he'll provide us with either a letter or even his presence at the next meeting.
Yeah, and just to follow up on what Steve mentioned, so this is this is something that Steve has done through his practice with other charters, and so I authorized him to engage in this. And this is will just be an item for discussion this evening. We won't be taking action because there are additional questions that need to be answered on this item before it comes up for a vote.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Commissioner Gale. Commissioner Gale raised the issue of why now, why this procedural matters is coming up now. What I would encourage Commissioner Gale to do is to call the treasurer and enter into a dialogue with the treasurer over why this came up now and the ramifications thereof, and report back to us before this becomes an action item at the next meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Commissioner Medina.
Chair, I was delayed on jumping on tonight's call. I actually couldn't join because my kid is not feeling well. Is it too late for me to register my vote on the motion that failed? I don't make it, Daddy. Second, buddy.
Yes, the votes have closed, Commissioner Medina.
Know for the public record that I had been texting a number of the fellow commissioners on that are on this commission, and I'm not very happy because I was asking my fellow call for a motion to delay this because I could not engage in this discussion. I find it incredibly frustrating that it is known that I am someone that has an opinion on the matter, that the reasons that were given not of that the motion couldn't be moved for a delay is deeply frustrating, given the problems that we've had with policing in Hartford for decades at this point. And the fact that the police commission is a solid solution that I think I'd like to have a better discussion around, especially providing history. And I requested for Attorney Mendick to introduce to the commission what he was working on in Hamden. I actually was under the impression that we would have had that presentation before we came to a vote. So it's unfortunately, a personal family matter that I wasn't able to attend the full dialogue, but just find it frustrating. And I hope that for future issues with fellow commissioners, or when we are all aware that there is a member of this commission that feels passionately about a subject, we will hold the vote until that person can engage fully in the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Medina. And I will say for the record that we did distribute the Hamden language in the agenda package, and Attorney Mendick did reference it before we began our deliberations on item 5C. And Steve, moving on quickly to the periodic ordinance review, could you just review that? As I mentioned, we will put a hold on it. Excuse me, not periodic ordinance review. The action item number 9, temporary absence or disability of mayor. Could you just review that quickly?
I'm glad you corrected yourself, because I was wondering whether it was a lapse in my memory. I thought we just dealt with the other items. So
it's been a long day.
So the temporary absence or disability, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. I'll explain it one more time. In the current charter, there is Part A, 4A, presently exists. We added a minor change to A2 regarding sickness or other cause. And so that's the situation where the mayor knows he or she is not going to be available, that he or she will be temporarily absent or disabled from being able to serve the office, and the president of the council becomes the acting mayor during that period of time. The second part is the new part, and we've had extensive discussions. I know we with the vice chair on this issue, and what we did here is we adopted a standard. This is new, that if the mayor fails to notify, if it becomes obvious to some that the mayor is unable to perform or attend to the performance of duties in office as a result of an unexplained sustained absence from town, from the city, typo, temporary disability or illness, the council can, by a vote of 7 members, so it's a very high standard, supermajority, make a determination that the mayor, that the council president assume the position of acting mayor, and that the determination needs to be based on best evidence as presented by competent authority. So there's a double whammy difficulty. So it's not a position that can be taken lightly. Number one, you need a supermajority, and number two, you need to have substantial evidence that the mayor is not capable of conducting himself or herself in office. So that's what the provision does. And then, that's a common provision. I don't want to say overwhelmingly common, but it's a provision that has origins in other communities throughout the state of Connecticut.
Commissioner Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, if an item is designated as an action item on the agenda, is the intent to alert the commissioners that this is something that we will be voting on at the meeting?
Excuse me, I was on mute. Yes, so I'll explain the process that I laid out a few meetings ago. So we won't be voting on the idea here is that items that are laid out as discussion items are for discussion. So you'll see background document 18, 19, 20, and 21, those proposals put forth by the chair are open for discussion and for members of the commission to weigh in. That's akin to kind of like the public hearing process somewhat at the General Assembly. And then once there's been discussion on an item, then we would put it forward for action. But the idea here is that we're not going to put up something for action that has that the commission has not had a chance to take a look at yet. And so that is the purpose of putting up that's the distinction between the discussion items and the action items.
The reason for my question is, and this is my second question, that if an item has been designated as an action item, given full notice to all commissioners that this is an item that we'll be taking a vote on or taking action on, and how does an item get removed from being an action and now become inactive, no longer being brought to a vote? Because as Commissioner Medina indicated, he reached out to several individuals, commissioners, seeking to have a particular item move, and it wasn't moved. But now we're faced with a situation in which an item has been designated as an action item and it's being moved. So as you indicated, once discussion has been completed or once the item has been presented via discussion to the commission, it then moves up to an action item. But now we have an action item that is not being voted on. So I'm just trying to understand, how is that decision being made and who is making the decision as to when we're going to vote on a particular item? Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Yeah, the decision is being made by the chair.
So this is a unilateral decision. So the chair can, after roll call, make a determination as to whether or not he's going to allow an item to be voted on at a particular meeting. Is that my understanding is correct?
There can be a motion, and correct me if I'm wrong, Attorney Mendick, but there can be a motion made to consider the action item, so if there's a motion on the floor to consider the action item, that can be made.
I was waiting for clarification from Attorney Mednick, since you referenced.
I gave the thumbs up. I'm sorry, Commissioner Smith. I didn't realize you were not probably not watching. Yes, the chair is correct. Somebody could move the item since it was on the agenda for that purpose.
Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. We'll now move on to item number 6, discussion items. And we will come first to the discussion on the Common Council. Steve, do you want to walk us through background document number 19?
Happy to do so. So what I tried to do here, and I thought it was going to be shorter than it was, is I tried to lay out what a legislative services office would look like. It does not specify any numbers. I thought that was a budget decision. It did talk about the potential in 4D for full-time employees, and there could be different categories of employees. It's anticipated that some of the employees would be classified employees, nonpartisan classified employees. And it's also anticipated that there would be unclassified employees. So that right now, I believe most of your employees are unclassified. They don't take a test. But if you're moving in the direction of having professional staff and other administrative staff, it would probably be necessary to move in the direction of classified employees. There's a provision in here that talks about the ability to hire counsel, which the Common Council has capacity to do. This just really lays it out very clearly so that no one could really stand in the way if there was ever an issue between the council and a mayor. Provision in here, because I've done it in others, if it's not necessary because somebody else served that function at this time for a parliamentarian, I put in a requirement for a director of legislative services with a 4-year renewable term, a provision for a budget analyst. This was discussed, I believe, during the public meetings on this subject many months ago on what the role of a budget analyst would be, and that's spelled out in subpart 6. And that is basically it. So that's so the only 2 job titles that are created would be the director and the budget analyst. The rest of it would really be up to the council upon taking office, upon following the approval and effective date of this legislation. It would provide the Hartford Council, which has staff, with a requirement for the staff to provide really, in many cases, nonpartisan assistance to the body, similar to the New Haven model. Unlike the New Haven model, however, retains the ability for some unclassified staff members in conformity with the culture and history of the Hartford Council.
Is there any discussion? Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Smith, you have your hand raised. Not sure if it's left over from previous comment. All right, we'll move on to Councilman Gill. Councilman Gill, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Thank you. As was just pointed out, the I guess it's in the ordinances right now that provide that every city council person may hire an administrative aide. And I note that this particular charter provision does not supplant that. It doesn't in any way eliminate that. And so what I see now is increasing the amount of bodies over at council by at least 2, as Attorney Medic pointed out, a legislative services person and a budget analyst. Council's budget's already pretty big, and I don't know if every other council member would agree with me, but from my observation, most members of council have had a difficult time finding things to do for their administrative assistants, and many of them have worked part-time as a result, appropriately enough. So I'm not clear how we would utilize a budget analyst. I mean, clearly you might want somebody to come in for a couple of hours here or there, or maybe even for 20 or 40 hours during budget season. But a full-time employee, not clear to me that this is anything that's necessary or been lacking, that council would benefit from. So, bottom line, none of this is clear to me as being necessary for council to be effective. I think we have some tools available, but even if and that's not to say that we shouldn't reorganize the office. I know there's, Commissioner Kent on before, and I know he made efforts with other members of the prior council to, I think he made efforts. I think Council President at the time, Sean Wooden, was making efforts to try to change the structure of the office, but I would like to see it all done with, change the structure of the office to include the administrative assistants, not to just add to what we already have with another layer. So I would just say that nothing in here intrigues me at this point and makes me want to jump at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Do we have any other comments on this section? this action, background document action, rather. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to discussion of background document number 21, the Board of Education.
So there's 2 points here that need to be made. Okay, I see where it is. First is there was some discussion back in September or October regarding ways and means of increasing voter participation in Board of Education elections, and the background document establishes transitions back the Board of Education into the municipal election cycle with all the other elected officials, so that I believe in 2025 there would be an election for the Board of Ed, unless, let me think this through a little bit. If this charter is adopted, whatever. I was trying to do a transition term so that you'd have a 2-year term for the Board of Education in 2025, so that the Board of Ed, yes, you have to do that because they're on the off cycle. I'm sorry. So this is correct. They would run in 2025 as they last ran in 2021. And they would run for a 2-year term in 2025, and they would be brought full cycle in 2027. So the intent would be to have the Board of Education on the normal cycle with the other positions in November of 2027 with an intervening 2-year term. The second change in Article 9, Chapter 9, relates to community outreach, the first reference in Chapter 9, Section 1 is back to the election cycle, but the last thing is that this requires members of the board to engage in outreach efforts, including to increase participation by the public in Board of Education activities by reaching out to political, religious, community-based, social, mutual benefit organizations, civic and business organizations. So the intent is to have a constitutional provision, a charter provision that requires Board of Education to reach out to the public.
Any discussion, questions on
Yes.
this? Commissioner Rubenstein?
Thank you. Through you to Council Mendick. Attorney Mendick, am I correct in assuming that the mayor still has 5 appointments to the Board of Ed?
This does not change the appointment requirements that are in the current charter.
Well, let me ask a question. In your view, how does an appointment by one person to the Board of Ed promulgate greater public participation as opposed to elections?
It's not my job to give opinions on public policy. From a legal perspective, there's no real legal answer there. That's really a public policy argument that the body should engage in, but I really have no, that's not what I am here to provide guidance on. I have no official opinion.
Secondly, with regard to moving the Board of Ed to the other docket, I'm not aware of any discussion amongst the commissioners to get this on the agenda. So I'm curious as to who actually participated in this. The last time that I heard was that the Board of Education vote was about 4.5% of the electors. Am I right? Something like that. And
I've heard the same. I heard that at the same meeting. I have not confirmed.
Commissioner Rubenstein, I don't have that number for you, but we can get that for you.
Okay. And I think that with regard to the mayor's office and the council, that was woefully inadequate as well. Something less than 20%, as I recall, of the electors. So I don't see where putting this, moving this to the order for the mayor and the council does anything more than make Board of Education members beholden to the administration, as mentioned by Commissioner Kennedy at one point. And secondly, this does nothing, I mean, absolutely nothing, to bolster public participation in voting. Whatever action we took with boards and commissions and other stuff isn't going to change anything with regard to the voting, and neither will something like this. It's very unfortunate for the citizens of Hartford that they have very little choice in who governs them. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Are there any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to item letter C, discussion on charter definitions. Attorney Mendick.
I said yes, sir. Thank you. On mute. I won't go through this in any detail. I would like to ask all of you to take a look. I promised you, and I got them done a little early, and there still may be variants, and I'm sending it over to the Corp Council, have them take a look at it. But these are the terms that are used throughout the document, and you will see them in the version of the charter when you get it. You will see them capitalized because they are now defined terms, defined up front in the charter. So this is an introduction to that. My hope is if there are any changes beyond that, based on anything we've done tonight, or I'm going to start editing the document to see if there's other terms that may fall into the definition section. But I believe these are most of the terms. We informally were doing it in the charter itself, and every time something was kind of defined, I use that as the basis for moving it into a definition section. So that is it. If there's any words you think should be defined in here, please let me know. I'm not sure if there's much we can discuss, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
One question I have, Attorney Mendick, this is, are there other municipalities that have charter definitions in their charters?
Yeah, there's a number of them that do. Fairfield, which I'm working with, has a short one. I'm doing a more expansive one for them right now. Hamden has a pretty extensive definition provision as well. And I just came across Groton has it as well. They're in a number of charters. I've been expanding the definition section because what I've tried to do with the documents is not only make them solid legal documents, but make them useful documents for the public to work with. And so instead of repeating the concept of notice 12 different times in 12 different ways, this establishes a definition of notice that is a standard definition of notice, unless there's a need for another definition. One of the things that I think we've come across in all my charters, I think it's come up here in Hartford as well, the concept of newspaper notice, which was an ancient concept that was utilized in charters and local government. That now gets placed into a definition of notice and simply requires newspaper notice if statutorily required, as opposed to making it a standard that is set here. It remains a standard if the town clerk or the council believes something should be published in the newspaper that's not required by law. The definition permits it because it's included within the definition of notice and publication. So yes, the short answer is yes, you'll find it in other charters. Stanford as well, which I did not work on.
Thank you. Any discussion on this item?
Through the chair.
Vice Chair DeJesus.
I find these extremely helpful, I think, for the public to better understand certain terminology. It breaks it down. You see this in state statutes too. So to see it in the charter, again, we got to make this is the people's document. So if we can make it easier for a common man to understand something that is legal or attempt to do that, I think is always a plus.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we will move on to D. Attorney Mendick.
The last of the background documents, number 20, are two relatively straightforward concepts. One is the concept under the sections we passed in the last couple of meetings of requiring chairs to be included in any ordinance that creates a commission or any charter commission. Declaratory language that the mayor shall not serve as chair of any elective or appointed board or commission. In effect, it's a prohibition of the mayor serving as the chair of any elected or appointed board or commission. The second change here relates to the appointment authority. I think we kind of glossed over the issue when we approved the board and commission section a couple of weeks ago, or we didn't gloss over it. We knew we were going to have to address it, and here we are. Replacing the 10 largest owners of taxable property as determined by the grand list, we are replacing it with the Metro Hartford Alliance or successor organization. Because if they go out of existence in the next 5 years, there presumably would be a successor for that type of organization. And we have a standard in here, even though there's a statute that does not require, there's an ordinance that does not require residency for this particular commission. We've placed in here a best efforts standard for the Metro Alliance, the Metro Hartford Alliance, to make best efforts to recommend Hartford residents for service on that board. Keep in mind that that board is an audit entity that requires some knowledge of accounting and auditing and law, and so that's dealt with in the current body of the board and commission language. Unlike other boards and commissions, there is a provision in the charter, I'll point out for the record, it's in the commentary on the bottom of the page, that allows the council by ordinance to open up boards and commissions to non-electors, non-residents. And in this particular case, there's an ordinance that permits non-residents to serve on this particular board.
Are there any questions or comments on this item? Vice Chairman DeJesus, you have a question?
I do. So I think the section 1B2, I think that is a great amendment if it goes through. Section 2A, as written, I'm not too comfortable with it. Metro Alliance does a lot of things, but I think there's some great organizations already in the city that can do it. One that I think is the NRCs. Hartford 2000 does a great job doing a lot of the legwork, and there's tons of leaders there that we can tap into. Many of the NRC members have been there for years. They have experience on when there's any plans that need to be done in our streetscape schools. They're familiar with how the structure of the city works. I would either keep it as is, but I just don't know if Metro Alliance is going to be a place where I think we're going to get people. I really want the city of Hartford to keep its seats and have residents here. I know that it's not required in this situation, but I really want for us to make sure that it is a Hartford resident. The other thing that I have with the Metro Alliance, which is a great organization, but is membership driven. So there is a fee. And I think it really focuses on the greater Hartford area. I think we need to get more leaders involved. And I think the NRZs are a perfect breeding ground. And I think is a resource that I tap into all the time for knowledge. And my opinion is either leave it as is or look for another organization that has deeper roots in our community. Because on our NRCs, we have a little bit of everything. And so I think we need something more local with local roots, deeper roots, so that we can make sure that whoever we recommend is from the city.
Thank you, Commissioner Vice Chairman DeJesus. Just to clarify, I think the Metro Hartford Alliance, the decision was made to propose this language because under the current language, which is the 10 largest owners of taxable property, the assumption is that a majority of those 10 largest property owners would be members of the Metro Hartford Alliance. And this would clear up some administrative issues that have come up in the past with this, with making this appointment and doing it in an expedient manner. That said, your points, regarding the NRCs and other community organizations are noted. So thank you, Vice Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on one moment, Commissioner Rubenstein. Councilman Gale, did you have your hand raised? No. Commissioner Rubenstein, you have the floor.
Thank you. Through you to to the counselor, Mednick. Mr. Mednick, can I comment on this? Even though I'm a member of the Audit Commission, without breaking the standard conflict of interest provisions?
I think that you have established the precedent during this process, if I'm not mistaken, of recusing yourself from dealing with Audit Commission issues. I am not the ethics authority, but I thought you already had made a determination that you should not engage in those discussions.
Then I won't. Then I won't engage in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rubenstein. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, we'll move to item E.
Did you want to handle that discussion on item E, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. Yes. This at the beginning of this process, we discussed potentially making changes to the preamble of the charter. We didn't really have the time during the period of time that we were bringing experts to have a discussion on the preamble, but I did want to put it forward as a discussion item to see if anyone had any questions or concerns about this.
What item number is that through the chair?
So this is item E. There's no associated action item with this. It's just merely a discussion on the preamble.
For purposes of everybody's edification, either I or the chair could read the preamble. It's pretty short. If people,
I would love to read the preamble, yes.
Then I'll leave it to the chair for that.
So, we the people of Hartford, Connecticut, desirous of achieving a more perfect state of civil society, grateful for the liberty we enjoy as a matter of right, and fully cognizant of our duties as free men and women, hereby adopt this charter for the more efficient efficacious, and equitable transaction of our public business. So that is our preamble. Folks are familiar with the preamble of the Constitution. Steve, I know you're familiar with the preambles of various other municipalities. Some are very short and curt. Some are a little bit more flowery, but typically they kind of are an aspirational statement, I think, and reflects the goals of the of what the city aspires to in its governance. So, if anyone has any questions or comments that they'd like to make about the preamble suggestions, you can feel free to do that now. Okay, seeing none.
Can we, through a chair, can you let us know when was this sent to us?
There was no associated document. It was just a discussion, a broad discussion about the preamble. So there's the only document that was sent over was the preamble.
The preamble is at the beginning of the charter, so everybody on the commission should have a copy of the charter. The preamble is at the beginning of the charter. Nothing has been changed. No recommendations at this point.
Okay, seeing no questions or comments, we'll go to item number 7 on this evening, discussion led by Attorney Mendick regarding the calendar. Attorney Mendick.
Thank you. So we are coming to a close here. The items that were either passed or moved by on the agenda this evening will probably come up in the next agenda, and the discussion items will come up on the next agenda. And I suppose I will be taking a look and get to the chair and others, see if there's any issues we've missed. I kind of did that some time ago, and I think we were pretty much on top of the issues that we were to address during the course of this enterprise. So my hope would be that between the 5th of May and perhaps another meeting, we should be able to finish up the work on the document. My hope is to have a document for you by the 5th. I think most of the changes we've talked about here are not going to be substantial changes, and a lot of the substantial changes have taken place already. So I'm hoping perhaps to have a draft of the document for you for the 5th of May. If not, it would be at the next meeting, which is not yet scheduled. The chair, I've recommended that the chair meet with the council president to figure out what the expectations are from the council and when they would like the charter document, how long the council wants to spend on the document, and how long they want to spend will really determine what kind of ending we're going to have. My hope is that we'd have just about another 3 weeks or so, if not a month, to about this time next month, including our public hearing, so we can get this to the commission late in May. But if the council is willing to spend the month of June on this document, not utilize their full 60 days that they have up to 60 days, and I've talked to the council about this before and got a sense that they were not going to need the full 60 days to go through the cycle, then the chair and I have talked about trying to get this in for their first meeting in June. So a lot will depend on what the council's needs are, and I would hope that by the 5th, the chair will be able to report back on what the calendar will look like so we can finish up the work in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. And to your point, we'll get a schedule for the wrapping our business up out to commissioners well before May 5th. So stay tuned for that, folks. Any questions with regards to the calendar? All right, seeing none, then we will stand adjourned without objection at 8:55 p.m. Thank you all.
Good night.
Good night.
Right.
Good night.